Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. Well, except in Green Bay and Buffalo. We'll talk about that later in the show. We'll do a post-game rather than a pre-game because we have Pete Tessier joining us live from balmy Winnipeg
Very balmy.
to discuss the extremely big trade that happened between the Blue Jackets and the Winnipeg Jets. So we'll start off the show right now. Eck will be joining us any moment, but we wanted, because Pete's time is limited today, we wanted to get started. So hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, January 25th, 2021.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportology.
I'm Pete Tessier coming to you from Winnipeg with the fun update of the week.
And I'm Michael Agello, and the Kansas City Chiefs suck. And this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Not really to the Super Bowl champions. I just said that because I said the Oilers suck last week, but that is true.
That's fine.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with the deal. The Winnipeg Jets trade Patrick Laine, former second overall pick in 2016, and Jack Roslovic, a former first-round pick, Columbus, Ohio native, to the Blue Jackets for a 2022 third-round draft pick and Pierre-Luc Dubois. Dubois' father is an assistant coach with the Manitoba Moose. It was a change of scenery for both players that was necessary, but hastened by Pierre-Luc Dubois' sort of lackadaisical shift that saw him getting benched by John Tortorella. And in the aftermath, Peter, we basically saw that everything was accelerated when that happened. But the interesting thing that we heard about the machinations about this deal was that the deal with the Jets was always there, and that Jarmo Kekalainen went around to other teams to see if other teams could top it. And in the end, they came back to the Jets and made this deal. Well, first, what do you think of the deal?
You know what? Here's the take on how you have to look at it. Laine is a special talent who does things that give you a big dopamine boost and endorphin rush when they happen. Mm-hmm. Right? They're feel-good moments, and fans relate to that. When you're in the arena and it happens and he rips that shot or he does one of his funky things, right, you'll love it. It feels amazing. But are the Jets a harder team to play against with him or with Pierre-Luc Dubois? And Russ, I believe it was you who put that tweet out earlier on Saturday when this came down. That's the point that the Jets have to consider, and Jets fans have to consider, because at the end of the day, you're trying to make your team more difficult to play against. And that's what Kevin Cheveldayoff did in this case. You want to go and read between the lines with everything else that's going on about it, that's a whole other discussion. But at the end of the day, if a center of Pierre-Luc Dubois' caliber is out there and you have an asset in which you have a plethora of wealth within on wingers that score goals, you can make that deal. And that's why there wasn't a topper of it. Who else has the depth of goal talent on the wings that Winnipeg has? Maybe the Leafs?
Yeah.
And what would Pierre-Luc Dubois do for the Leafs that isn't already there?
Well, they wouldn't need him because they have. I mean, this is
right
after Brian Little's injury.
Yeah.
They went out and put a stopgap out there with Paul Stastny for a year, and that was fine. We know the reason they did that, but Russ, Dubois gives them a 1-2 punch up the middle that I think in the North Division, and then probably in the West after this reconfiguration is gone, they have a 1-2 combo that's among the best in the league, and they're not just like offensive 1-2 combo. I think Scheifele's not bad as a defensive player, and
you didn't watch last night.
Well, I didn't watch last night, but Dubois is a very good two-way center.
Yeah, and he's physical. He has some way to go to be better at faceoffs, but remember, he's a converted guy, so he's in the mid-40s, and he can get a little better than that, but that's going to come with time. But I did feel like Winnipeg was going to be in games because of Connor Hellebuyck. That's why I picked him to win the Vezina again, because I was like, hey, even if they don't make the playoffs, Hellebuyck's going to keep them in games. And we did see that early on, Pete. Like, that was definitely happening. But now that they added to their team defense, added to some toughness, this could really help them eke out some close games that I don't think they could have before. Now, again, I'm going to get away from the personality thing because I don't think there's a problem with either guy in the sense that you can't work with them. I just think Dubois had a coach in Torts that isn't the easiest to deal with, but also a city that doesn't pay big money. They just don't pay big money. So when he was their best scorer in the playoffs, did he ask for too much? Probably. But he was still a point a game in the playoffs. And, at the end of the day, I think they signed a quick deal, and Mike and I had said this, so he could get traded. So we felt like he was going to get traded. His coach sped it up. As far as the line goes, he's just a headstrong kid. I don't have anything against him other than that. But being headstrong could derail part of his career in the sense that if he doesn't become a 40-goal scorer every year, then being headstrong is going to be an eyesore.
Well, Pete, here's the insight that I want from you. Roslovic had, former first-round pick, 25th overall in the 2015 draft, had a couple really good years in the American Hockey League, point per game in 2017-18 with the Moose. That's never really translated in terms of his offense at the NHL level, but he did have 12 goals last year in 71 games. Where do you think he equates? Is he a future 2, a future 3? Where do you think he fits in?
It depends on the team. I think Jack Roslovic has to figure out what style of game he's going to play and then push that forward with the coaches that he has. So John Tortorella is going to have to take a look at what he did last year with the Jets, what he's done the previous years, and decide, how do I use him? Roslovic can be very good at puck retrieval. He's quick, he's shifty, he can get in down low quick. But what he's got to figure out is, how does he do his setups? So the thing that everyone's talking about with this deal, Mike, is who's going to feed Laine the puck? If he wasn't getting fed the puck in Winnipeg, who's the person in Columbus? I've seen people say it's going to be Roslovic. I don't think they played a lick of time together last year.
Yeah, they're saying now it might be Max Domi, but the thing is, Max Domi maybe proved in Montreal that he's not a center. And I don't know whether Tortorella will be able to withstand the defensive inadequacies of Max Domi playing up the middle. Will the positive outweigh the negative? We know that Tortorella doesn't buy that crap. It's like, if you're giving up the puck, if you're making defensive problems up the middle, you're not going to play up the middle.
Here's what I'll say about Roslovic. I mean, there's no question that Cheverdayoff rushed him with a contract because they were worried about losing a player that was in college and felt like maybe if we don't do this soon, it's going to be another situation where down the line he's going to leave college. But that did rush him up the ladder, and he played like 90 games in the AHL. He didn't play a ton in college, and then you throw him in the NHL. And so getting double-figure goals is nice, but he hasn't ever rounded out the rest of his game yet. And I think there's no time for that.
That's it. It's on Jack Roslovic now. Jack Roslovic turned down a 1-year, $1.8 million deal with the Jets in the offseason, and he just signed a 2-year, 3.6.
Yeah, 1.8.
Yeah, right. So he agreed. So he got an extra year, but it's on him, and that's the prove it to me deal for Jarmo, right? And is he a Torts kind of guy? Well, no one really knows who a Torts kind of guy is until that player becomes a Torts kind of player. Right. So that's the issue with Roslovic. I think a lot of Jets fans would say they thought a little more should have come back because you're giving up 2 players instead of 1 player in a draft pick. But we know what the price is for a young stud center. It's a lot.
That's what it boils down to. You're trading for a number 1 center. When you're trading for a number 1 center, even if he's not the best number 1 center in the league, it's still something most teams don't have. And so at the end of the day,
and now with Scheifele as their number 1, you've got one of the best number 2s in the league. That 1-2 punch, I think, is fantastic. Now, when I heard this deal, the thing I immediately thought, Dubois signed a 2-year bridge deal at $5 million per. That's a great figure for a number 2 center who's as good as he is. So Cheveldayoff has some time before he negotiates. Before he has to negotiate a new contract with him. Laine is in the last year of the 2-year bridge, so he's got to be signed this upcoming summer. And that's the big question here. Now, they got Roslovic signed. That's fine. That's put away. But, Eck was reporting that Laine wanted to go to a big market. Alert, folks, Columbus is not a big market. I don't, and Eck, this is the thing. I think that the who wins this deal rests on Jarmo getting Laine signed to a long-term extension, and based on the track record of guys like Nash getting signed and leaving, and Bobrovsky and Panarin and Duchesne, you keep going down the line. They don't pay these guys. And that's the word. If they pay Laine, then this is a good deal for Columbus. And if they don't pay him and they end up trading him someplace else, then this is a disaster for Columbus.
That's very true. That's very true. I think they already have started talking to Laine. That's good news. They've already had some talks. This trade, the way this trade goes down tells you a couple things. One, I don't think necessarily Columbus was confident that they could sign Laine in some ways, just because but I thought they should give it a shot, and I also think that they're putting more into this season than I gave credit for before. And the interesting thing about this now, Columbus, when I talked to some sources through Columbus, they were 1-3 before this trade happens, right? And they're about to go in and play a game against Tampa, so they're looking at going 1-4, and so Jarmo's looking at 1-4. If you remember, I never realized that this impact it had on the team, but it did have a big impact on the people around the team. A few years back when they went 0-7 to start the season, and Columbus went 0-7 to start the season, and they never could recover from that. They felt like so. Jarmo's impatience grew from that, basically, like looking at this thing and saying, "Oh man, what's 1-4 in this season, a 56-game season, it's like to them that was 0-7, and they saw that
or close to it, yeah,
right, and they were very, very worried, and I think that that played into it, and they realized that Laine's going to give them a boost. It definitely gives the fan base a boost. Now they do have to keep him there, and that's going to be difficult, as we've all said. But you definitely get the impression from this trade that Winnipeg knew for sure they weren't going to be able to sign him. They knew that, obviously. They knew.
Yeah, no, there's no way, Peter. There's no way he was going to sign another deal.
Right.
I don't think he was, but I think the thing is that look, if you think about the pieces here, the message was clear to Laine, from Laine, that through his agent, that the pressure was on, and there's all sorts of theories of who leaked that out. The fact is, Kevin Cheveldayoff at least learned from his past mistake that when a player wants out, you address it and move on.
Right.
Don't let it linger.
Yeah,
because we've seen don't let it fester, don't let it linger, get it dealt with, and he did. I don't think that Laine is going to stay in Columbus. I think he's going to get moved again, and I think Jarmo knows that it is easier to negotiate to move the winger who scores goals than it is to negotiate to move the center, and that it was going to be harder to do that. And Laine will be open to moving someplace a little bigger, maybe glitzier. And Jarmo knows he can probably control the return coming back. So he gets a center out of this in Roslovic. What does he get if he moves Laine, if Laine goes and scores 35, 40 goals this season?
Yeah,
that's hard to happen because it's a 56-game season. But let's say take that 40-goal pace.
Yeah, right. And that feeds into the scenario you were talking about LA, who have a bevy of prospects. They could probably get 2 or 3 really good prospects for Laine because they need that scoring. But Ghostface in the chats, like, are Werenski and Jones UFA? Jones is a UFA after next season. Werenski is an arbitration eligible RFA. I think 1 year before. Maybe 1 or 2 before UFA. And here's the situation with Columbus. Like I said, if they don't sign Laine, then basically they're the Kansas City Athletics of the NHL. They're a clearinghouse. They get young players, they develop them, and then when they can't afford them, they move them out. And I don't know if that's a great picture for the NHL to have.
They've been doing this for a few years now. Panarin, Bob, this is this isn't anything new for them.
Right. Yeah. It's true. It's
exactly.
True.
So if you want to get into the weeds on some of this, there is some stuff seeping out all over the place. There's been some stuff written. there's you've got to have a little bit. You got to point some fingers at the Jets for letting this go on. How did this happen? The rumors of the division in the locker room, and there's some finger pointing going on towards the Blue Jackets. And I don't want to draw things into this, but my understanding is that there were some political views in the Columbus organization that are not favored by Pierre-Luc Dubois. And that's come out. There are some very strong things that have been said about the leadership qualities of Blake Wheeler. They're not very favorable. And Mark Scheifele. Blake Wheeler said on Saturday in Ottawa, I have some second thoughts about how I treated the guy.
Yeah, that was very cryptic.
It was very cryptic.
Yeah.
It was an odd one to hear, particularly now. And frankly, the one thing that I think people have to understand is if you are looking at the Winnipeg Jets, does there seem to be an inordinate amount of power and prestige placed upon Paul Maurice right now?
Yeah. I mean, no different than Torts in Columbus. Honestly, it's the same.
But what about control and aspects? You land a generational talent like Laine. Mm-hmm. How many times in a franchise's history?
Okay,
if you're the Penguins, you're really lucky.
But the answer to the other one is go try and find a new coach that wants to coach the Winnipeg Jets. It's not easy.
Right. And there's only 32 jobs in the league to be a head coach.
It doesn't matter, but they're usually around 27, 8, and 9 as far as where guys want to actually coach.
And the same with playing in Winnipeg. Yet but you can get guys to sign here.
But Peter, to that point, it's like Maurice may not have been able to get the most out of Laine. There was that fire and gasoline component there. I don't know how much different that is from the Leaf situation with Babcock, Matthews, and Marner, and him being able to get the most out. At a certain point, he got the most that he could get out of them. Then they needed a different coach to get more out of them. And maybe the next move for the Jets is Maurice going, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
We have had this conversation more than a few times about the Winnipeg Jets and the talent level. And has Maurice taken them as far as they can go? And you need to bring in a Lavi who gets you over the hump, that kind of coach, right? Where Laviolette is very good at taking a team that's not quite there, but then driving it, but he's got a short shelf life.
But Lavi doesn't go ice fishing. He goes regular fishing.
That's fine. Chevy's got a cottage.
Dustin Bufflin's good at ice fishing.
He's good at all fishing.
I guess the big question, some people want to know this in the chat room, and I think is, Laine, we talk, you guys were talking to when I came on about, is good Laine work with Tortorella? And in my opinion, I really think he can. I think anybody can. It's just easier. It's easier to say, will he, because he might not. Because but I think guys who don't. The major thing about him in Winnipeg was not getting enough first line minutes. That was a big issue. He's going to get that in Tortorella. Tortorella's going to give him every opportunity to be the scorer. I mean,
he'll get 22, 23 minutes.
They need scoring desperately. They're in a huge spot there, right? So, but there's he doesn't work hard, on the ice. And I think that he's a hard worker. He's such a sniper. Now you're not going to get him blocking shots necessarily all that easily, but. Mm-hmm. But you want that. You can't afford to have him blocking shots for
Columbus is sort of back to the days of Rick Nash. Remember when Rick Nash was there and he was an MVP? Yeah. And Laine's got the talent to be that type of player. I don't know if he can win an MVP because I think he's more of a one-dimensional offensive guy. But when they had Nash, they were weak up the middle. Their number one center was Derek Brassard. Yep. And they made the playoffs once. They got swept by Detroit. They were sort of an imperfect model of a franchise. Now I think they're better overall because of Torts.
Way better because their defense. I mean, their defense is crazy.
But I don't know how much better, and I don't know how with Laine if they're going to be more successful in the postseason if they get to the postseason.
I mean, this is a team that Columbus is an emotional team. They ride emotions all the way, and this is the kind of trade, and you saw it in the way that they beat Tampa. Right after this trade happens, they go out, they go out and they take Tampa. This is a team that rides emotions, and I think that's part of that is you have to have that out of a team that's underskilled, and you also get that out of Tortorella as a coach that rides emotions. So I think about this, Zach. they always have trouble with goal scoring in Columbus. Nash leads the franchise with 289, then Cam Atkinson with 198, then Nick Foligno with 138. That's it.
I know. They've never had anybody in Laine's world. I mean, as far as scoring goes, they've never had. And this,
Panarin was the closest. Panarin was in Laine's world.
Yeah, I mean, you remember how much they wanted. I mean, they have a defenseman in Laine's world, in Seth Jones. You know, like they have a star defenseman, and now they have a superstar forward.
Torts is going to have his work cut out trying to figure out how he's going to get Laine the puck when Laine was also starting to be isolated and targeted in Winnipeg too. And you saw what happened his big year, 44 goals. His goals have only gone down every year because one, the Jets power play changed, they changed structures, but teams know how to isolate it. And that's the difference where Laine may have that generational shot. He may have that incredible hands, but he hasn't figured out what Ovechkin did very early on, how to find open space and not get seen. Brett Hull eventually figured it out.
Yeah.
Elias Pettersson's figuring it out, not right now, but he has these guys with these wacky, incredible shots. And, you know, Paul Maurice tried to make Laine this multi-dimensional player and said he's a power forward. Well, he's a big guy. He's not very thick. And he skates a little awkwardly. That's not a powered forward. That's someone who has to you have to build something around a little differently. And when it worked spectacularly. But again, stuck in the mud, and Paul Maurice digs in, and he won't adapt again. And that's where I can understand why Laine got frustrated. Use me for what I'm good at.
And Peter, I remember that game, Leafs and Jets, the first meeting between Matthews and Laine being set up at the top of the faceoff circle on the power play and blowing that howitzer that he has past whoever the Leaf, Freddie Anderson or whoever the Leaf goalie was, for 2 or 3 goals. And I'm like, okay, you keep him there and you keep feeding that machine the puck every single time. Now, defenses may try to take that away, but they haven't taken it away from Ovechkin because Ovechkin is still firing away now from the same place.
Here's another interesting stat. So last year, Columbus didn't have one player in the top 50 for power play goals. In the top 50.
Top 50, I know. No, and this is they've never had any. This is a brand new world for them, and it's exciting for them, at least for this season. And Laine may find it to be something that he really likes. The question is whether or not, I've heard very clearly, very, very clearly that he wants to play in LA. I've heard it from many people now, and there's an obvious thing that's if he has the ability to sign wherever he wants to, that's where he wants to go. He wants to sign in LA and play in LA.
Russ, Dubois led the team with 49 points, and the Leafs team that finished dead last in the NHL, P.A. Parento had 50 points.
I know, and even like the year before, the power play goal leader on Columbus was Duchesne, and Duchesne's not there anymore. So and
a lot of those goals weren't scored in Columbus.
Well, but he scored 10 of them.
But in Columbus itself?
Yeah.
I mean, that year, wasn't he? He was
only there from March until the end of the year, so there's no way he scored 10 power play goals in a month and a half. So it was probably cumulative.
Oh, no, sorry, 3. It was 3. It was
3. It was 10 games. I like the move. They had to move him. They had to move him. The game, obviously, they had to move Dubois. And if you're gonna do that, why not get a shot to like impress Laine over the rest of the year, get some excitement. Probably get yourself in the playoffs. I think that this is a weaker division, I believe, than the Canadian division.
If he could score, it might get him in the playoffs. If he hits 25 goals,
but I think it's a weaker defensive division than the Canadian division.
Yeah.
Peter, sorry.
Go ahead, Mike. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the interesting thing was, and I think it was Yarmo that said this, is that in return for Laine, they either had to get what they considered a number 1 center or a number 1 defenseman, and obviously they wanted that because Bufflin is gone and they traded Trouba away. So it's interesting that it was easier for them to get the number 1 center / number 2. And I don't know where the hell they get the number 1 defenseman because they will grow on trees.
So let's ask this, Mike: Are the Leafs and the Jets mirror twins with different names in terms of
very similar? Yeah.
So this is what I'll say about the number 1 center thing with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Mark Scheifele has a pretty abysmal game in his own below the circles in his own end. It's not
Right.
good. It was on full display last night. Pierre-Luc Dubois is very different. Paul Stastny is very different.
Mm-hmm.
What this does is depth and skill down the middle that plays a 200-foot game allows you to give different options on your defense deployment.
Right.
And how they work and who's on the ice with whom. All of a sudden, you can now match different lines a lot differently. Last night, Paul Maurice put Scheifele, Wheeler, and Connor up against McDavid. And they got stung just brutally. Now, what happens when Pierre-Luc Dubois is in there and you come around in another game and he's there? Do you go Ehlers, Dubois, and Kopp? 3 guys who play 200-foot games. That's a very different team to play against. Mm-hmm. And that's the difference for the Jets D. The Jets D, like the Leafs, it isn't atrocious.
Yeah.
It's just not as grand as what the forwards look like.
Well,
I'll make this statement as a neutral observer for both those teams. I think the problem with both of their defenses is often pinned on the defensemen themselves, but I honestly do believe it comes more from the forwards on both teams not being
right. And I think that's in the process of changing in Toronto because they realize that's the reason that they've lost the last 2 or 3 years. Yeah. Now, if you compare them side by side, I think Winnipeg's got the better goaltender, but I don't think Anderson is as bad as Russ thinks he is. I think I think the Leafs defense has improved. Brody has worked well with Riley. Now, Brody's never going to clear the front of the net, but I think he's a very decent top pairing with Riley, and the second pairing of Muzzin and Hall has been good. And I think their bottom pairing plays 12 minutes. It's really, unless it's a liability, it's not consequential. The thing is with the forwards, and I look at Winnipeg and I look at Toronto right now. Elliot Friedman reported on the weekend that the Leafs are looking for depth forwards now with Robertson out and with Thornton out. And I look at the Jets and their bottom 6. And Nate Thompson, Trevor Lewis, it doesn't really float your boat. Whereas like the Leafs,
but that's the difference between the two clubs. The Leafs have better forwards, and the Jets have way better goaltending.
Right.
But here's the other thing I'll say about that. And this kind of ties into Columbus too, because I think that a lot of your defense, you're talking about quarterbacks to start the play, and what's happening and where Laine is going to love it in Columbus is he's never had somebody who's going to give him the passes that coming up the ice that Werenski and Jones
that's
him constantly.
The very good point, and you got to remember what was happening with Laine when he really was lighting it up. Who did he have taking a lot of attention away from him? Byfuglien.
Yeah, right.
So if you've got Werenski and Jones out there on the points, or one or the other, and you've got Laine there, and one of those guys is willing to wind up and launch, you're only helping Laine. You're only helping it, and that's gone on Winnipeg. Morrissey's trying to do it; it's not working. It may start happening with Heinola in time, but they're being very cautious with him. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you've got to have 2 guys who can set Laine loose. And a lot of times what people forget about Laine is, you call it a cherry picker, call it whatever you want. He needs to find the ways to be up at the center line so he doesn't have to get into a foot race. Once he's moving, he can get past you. But if he's static at your own blue trying to take an outlet pass, he's got to have a lot of room to get up to speed. And then
look who Werenski and Jones have been trying to do. I mean, there's been nobody that they can make. They look for that guy up there, cheating a little bit.
Yeah, Werenski definitely had to fill that role last year.
But there's nobody for them to pass to as quarterbacks. They have no deep threat.
Yeah.
If you want to use a football analogy, there was no deep threat on Columbus, and so those guys.
Bjorkstrand's pretty good on the power play. Bjorkstrand's a good guy to pass it to.
It's good guy. It's good on the power play, but I'm talking about the pass that they make from just.
Oh, you're talking about on 5-on-5?
No, and they make the pass they make from their own inner.
They have nobody to stretch the offense.
Yeah,
that's fair.
That's going to happen with Laine and Werenski and Jones are going to see him. They're going to find him, and that's going to really change the way Columbus looks offensively because Columbus never had that play.
Right, and did Pierre-Luc Dubois have an Ehlers to pass to?
No.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
Ehlers has gone down the last few years, and I'm not sure why. He used to have more ability than what he's showing now. But the other thing for Columbus,
on fire this year, Russ.
Yeah.
He is on fire right now.
Okay, well that's good because he should be. Merzlikins is not having a good year so far.
Yeah, no, Columbus's goaltending has to get better. But
it has to get better if they're going to continue.
That's true with everybody who's struggling right now. When you go through the whole team. But we went on Friday. We had Kevin on, Peter, and we went through the lineup, the whole NHL, to see where we thought Dubois fell as far as being a top line center. Like, was he really a top line center? And we found maybe like 8 or 9 teams he'd be the top line center on. But beyond that, he was a second. But I said he's an incredible second line center. And we did not say he was a better center than Scheifele. So we thought, so now that 1-2 punch that does make Winnipeg.
And also, if you're the Jets, who's pushing Scheifele right now?
Yeah, right.
No one.
I mean, and never has.
It's not Stastny. I mean, he's there. Like if Scheifele went down or whatever, Stastny's your first line center all of a sudden.
Yeah.
But now, who's pushing him, and who's going to push him to take control of the team? Who's going to push him in the future? Right? Scheifele's always been the captain in waiting, and maybe this is the point that everyone's not seeing in between the lines. Maybe Cheveldayoff and management know that this whole room divide thing, this Scheifele and Wheeler thing, is setting a bad precedent, and we learn from it from Wheeler. We've got to balance this out, and we bring in a guy who's going to push this and change the dynamic because Scheifele feels a little pressure on him, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
And I also know for a fact that they talked a lot to Pierre-Luc's father.
Yeah.
Who's, of course, he sits as an assistant coach on the Manitoba Moose, which means his family lives in Winnipeg. That's that's nothing small, and that's not a small deal. And when you talk about, Laine wants to go to LA, and everybody knows Dubois wants to go to New York to play with Panarin. That's those guys are close, thick as thieves. So when you look at it, Winnipeg has him for 4 years, so that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you want to keep him there, it doesn't hurt, to be able to go to go to Mark Dubois and say, what's the deal here? They have a person within their own organization who knows the kid inside out.
But I know you need to go, Peter, in a few minutes. But that's the factor for Winnipeg is with Dubois, you want to prevent the sort of walking towards free agency like happened with Trouba. It's like they got 2 years left on this bridge deal. Next summer, they have to put the full court press on getting him signed to a long-term extension. If not, then you're basically, like X said, you're going to have him for 4 years, and then he's going wherever he wants to go.
Yeah,
I think so what you guys may not know is Dubois quarantined here in the off season and spent part of before the bubble started. He's already been here.
His family lives there. I mean, that's the reality.
He lives in a very modest area, other side of the river from me, not an area called St. James Silver Heights. Nothing fancy, but there's a very good network of NHL players who come back to Winnipeg who are from Manitoba. Yeah. Lake of the Woods, just across the Ontario border, is basically the summer. It's the Central Canada summer home of, unlike Kelowna and the Okanagan, it's just littered with them. Yeah. And, they come there, they train, they hang out. Jonathan Toews brings a lot of teammates up there. And it's that's
where
it's a great place.
Mike Richards used to be up there too.
Yeah, Mike's still up there. He still lives in Kenora. He's got a great place. Hamanek's got a place out there. There's quite a few of them. And, it's a fun area. And, there's no shortage of good times out there. And if you're living there year round, you can have a good time. But the thing with the NHLers that people forget is, so say your season ends in May, you got to ramp it back up in terms of training and getting ready, in the summer. But you can do that anywhere. You can be on a beach in Hawaii doing it. Yeah. It's not a hardship to have to live in a place because you're traveling all year anyways.
Yeah, right. No, they that's why a lot of them get together and train together, because it's more fun. They're used to the team environment. Peter, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate having you.
Yeah. And it's been great. It's fun to break some Jets news and be a part of it. So thanks for having me. I'm going to run. And you guys take care, okay?
Thanks.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah. So I guess it's just you and me, Mike.
Russ will be back. I'm sure he's probably taking Pearl out.
I can't wait to see these guys in their new lineups. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it happen.
And the interesting thing that about that is that all of a sudden after this trade, it's like, you heard that the NHL teams in Canada were pressing the Canadian government to lower the quarantine from 14 days to 7 days with 4 negative tests. And I think we're probably going to end up seeing that happen, because if they're testing negative 4 times, then the likelihood of them, having COVID is severely limited.
And let's remember that these aren't just your normal person going from the U.S. to Canada. These guys are being tested every day in the U.S. as well. So I mean, they know that these guys are clean. For the most part, it would be really, way less likely that they would be carrying something up there, because they are being tested every single day in the U.S. So, excuse me, to me, that's kind of a no-brainer to lower that, at least for players.
Yeah. So we'll wait till Russ gets back to talk about the Flyer situation, but we have to talk about the Canucks and their defensive I mean, everybody is going bonkers about the Montreal Canadiens and how well they're playing. Just like everybody's going bonkers about the Washington Capitals and how they're at the top of the division in the East. But they have to factor in the fact that the Washington Capitals in less than 2 weeks have played Buffalo, the worst team or the second worst team in their division, 4 times, and they've earned 7 of 8 points. And Montreal has played in Vancouver 3 times, a team that is struggling on defense and has injuries on the blue line, and they've beaten them 3 times. I think it colors everything that's going on in terms of the standings.
Oh, it's true. Like straight up, like my blog today is about that, as you saw. Like just every team that's at the top right now. And some of those teams are teams we still expect to stay at the top, but the scheduling has been crazy. Like Vegas, they look incredible, no questions asked. They look incredible. But they have played 6 games, 4 of which have been against Arizona. 2 against Anaheim. This is like we haven't. I want to see Vegas play St. Louis and Colorado before I'm like, yeah, they're the runaway champion of that division. We have to see where that goes. I mean, the reality is that the schedule is so weird with people playing each other, back to back times. It's skewed. But the interesting thing about that is the NHL is a league where you tend to get out to a good start, and it's harder to catch up than it is to.
Right, and you were saying that with the 1-4 start with Columbus, the desperation.
The schedule is crazy. They have 2 games against St. Louis, but then they go back to Anaheim and Arizona again. I mean, they could be, 14-3, and everything will be perfect. There will be no issues here.
Now, I heard an interesting theory. I think it was Elliot Friedman that mentioned this, but he was talking about the Capitals getting fined $100,000 for the violations. And he said the reason that the NHL maybe came down so hard on the Capitals is that they're trying to get like for example, San Jose right now, they're trying to get San Jose back into Santa Clara County. They pushed the restrictions on them until like the first week of February, but they're trying to get them back in there. And if the NHL shows that they're being lax in terms of their COVID things, then the chances of them getting back to San Jose are lessened. And that's the reason why they're coming down hard on the Capitals and anybody else who makes.
But this season's really getting
it's kind of what I said the other day, where you remember that these cities are giving permission because of these protocols to let this happen. So, and it's more so the teams coming into the cities that are the issue to them than their own teams. Their own teams, they live there anyway. But when teams are coming from other places, like that, the problem with California is everybody coming from other places into San Jose.
Heck, we had Patrick Williams, who covers the American Hockey League, on the Off the Post show on the weekend, and he was talking about. The Ottawa Senators and the Leafs got permission from the Ontario government to play games, but the 2 Ontario-based AHL teams haven't gotten permission, and that's the reason why the AHL hasn't put out a Canadian division schedule, because they don't know whether those teams are going to even be able to play.
I know they still don't have it. That's nuts. I mean it is just the reality we live in. I mean, now everyone's afraid of the next wave being really, really this incredibly contagious thing. Sure. I don't know. I can see Russ and I can see the media getting shut out at any point.
I don't think so. I think
I'm really hoping not, but I mean,
think vaccines are going to come through in time that it doesn't become. I saw Fauci talking about it, and the hope is.
Are you able to get the vaccine in New Jersey yet, Russ? Have you been able to get it yet?
Yes. So New Jersey's not doing horribly at all.
Jersey's doing great.
As far as vaccines, nobody's doing well, but that's another thing. But the idea is, if enough people get vaccinated, then the hope is this new strain doesn't ever get to the power that the last one did. But
they're saying that the vaccine, the Pfizer and the Moderna one, is working on the South African strain. So they seem to be working on the variants.
And Johnson & Johnson may have one on the market next week.
Yeah, it's a one-shot one.
Right.
But in terms of the scheduling, I mean, I
was going to bring up the schedule.
Okay. Go ahead.
So Florida, as an example, now has to play 54 games in 71 days, which is crazy. And that's something where that whole division, because
it says 102 days.
Yeah.
No. I just saw 54 and 71. Sean Shapiro posted it.
I think it's wrong, but okay, let's go with that.
So, I mean, there's going to be some tight turns here now.
Yeah. No, we're in a race. It's a race right now. It's a big time race.
Well, what may happen?
That's fine, but I think, and once that changes.
Oh no, it is 102. He did switch it. Okay.
What may happen is that, like, because Florida, Carolina, and Tampa are all affected in the Central. The Central Division might be or the playoffs might go to points percentage than it will actual games. Because
I think that's what I think is going to happen. I think because I don't think making up these games. The schedule is so tight as it is. Making up these games is going to be so difficult on these teams. The schedule is just crazy tight right now. And
somebody said that, like, if that later in the season, what might happen, like what happens in baseball, Russ, teams play 162 games in baseball, but if it's like Pittsburgh versus the Mets, and they're both they're in fourth and fifth place in their divisions, and the games don't matter, then they simply just won't play the games. I
think they'll figure that out last month of the season, but they're not going to do it now. So they're going to try and make up as many as they can now. So it gives these teams as much of a fighting chance early in the season.
Yeah.
But I think once we see like the trading deadline, we're going to actually, honestly, 15, 17 games into the season, we're going to know where some teams stand, and we'll probably see early movement as a result. But a team that's not doing any movement, is the Philadelphia Flyers. And, this is going to come on Chuck Fletcher at some point because, we talked about not replacing Niskanen correctly. They went and got Gustafsson instead. That was just another way of sort of masking the actual problem of not having good defenders and enough of them. And now with the injuries, with Myers out and everything, their defense is one of the worst in the league. The way it looks, it's disjointed.
Yeah.
It's bad. And it's affecting Carter Hart. He is now, the last 2 games, he got incredibly frustrated. We talked about it, that it was building. And I'll answer that question after. But, we talked about it, that it was building. But right now, you know what? If you're Philly, you could have this could cost you your season waiting for Couturier and Myers and Frost, any of those, 2 of those 3 to come back while you're trying to solve this. If you don't put somebody else into this equation, a better than a bottom pairing. I'm not saying the guy has to be a top pairing defenseman, but you got to get a guy who could at least be a 4 to correct this problem, because you can't put Sanheim on the top pairing. You saw what happens if you do.
I mean, here's the big issue that kind of none of us really. I mean, we did talk about it, but we thought about it, but it actually is like a real issue. If you make a trade, say they make a trade, or even if they bring in like Hainsey, like Mike was saying, a guy like that, which would help. I agree. I think that's a good. I think that's a move they should make tomorrow. I think Hainsey should come in right away. I think that would be something
if he's willing to. Yeah,
if he's willing to. Still got to quarantine him, right? And the problem with that becomes like. Myers return versus quarantining Haynes. I think that what we see is the short-term fixes are really, really hard to pull off.
Well, I think.
Let's just say this. I don't think, even if Myers is back, I think they could use Hainsey. I mean, it may be a short term in terms of being able to plug him in the lineup when people were injured, but I think they need a veteran defensive defenseman to pair with in their top, to be in their top 4, even with the injured guys back.
Yeah, this is a season-long thing, and the injuries only showed how bad it could be. Yeah. And so I would get somebody into quarantine ASAP if I could, like a Hainsey. So I could get him, or go and trade for Ben Hutton, whatever you need to do. Honestly, Eck, I told you in the offseason, and I told Mike this offline, I would have traded for I would have signed Ben Hutton over Gustafsson, because I don't think they needed the offensive defenseman. They had Kasperi, who they could definitely try again, but to get this other guy that they were thinking they needed because they needed like this extra scoring punch, maybe to outscore the opposition, It's not what they needed. They actually needed a guy who could play defense.
The last time I can remember a team going out and signing a player that was essentially a repeat of the same player that they already had was when the Leafs went out and signed Jason Blake when they had Darcy Tucker. It's like, okay, you got one feisty short guy who's a pain in the ass, and now you've added a second one, and where the hell are you going to play him? You had Kasperi. Vigneault didn't like the way he played. That you go out and sign another guy who plays the same way. But what, is it just because his name is Gustafsson? It's different? They both start with G.
No, it's just because he needed a defenseman, and he fit in the salary structure, so he rolled the dice. Now,
I think the Hag thing, I think the idea of the Swedish combination of those two guys, I think they felt like they would be able to play. They'd be able to play it in together easily, which is they've been playing together completely since they got they've been together the whole time, right? So I think that's something that they also
I mean that part may be successful, but neither of them can play in the top four, so then it's not successful, and it's affecting their goaltender. It is affecting Carter Hart, and again. We have to bring up until he could overcome this. I think Sam Carchidi had the stat. He's like 4-12-1 on the road when there's actual true road games, not counting the bubble.
Right.
That's still an issue for him.
Yeah, and the other, I think, really interesting thing that obviously we all saw the Carter Hart meltdown after the last game.
Yeah.
And
it could help him. It could.
What occurs to me when I watch that, the first thing that occurs to me is he never does that in a full arena of Boston Bruins fans. Like
that's probably true.
Yeah. Think about the reaction that you get and how you will forever be vindicated. You'll just forever be, screwed and screwed, in that town if you do that in front of the Bruins fans at the end of a game.
Well, I saw hints of this coming because the 5-4 loss that they had to the Bruins, the first game. He gave up a goal. I think it was to Marchand, and when he gave up the goal, he did the cardinal sin of goaltenders. He did the raises okay. You're getting maybe he's getting on himself. Maybe he's expecting more of himself. But there's
I blame the coach for playing him as much as they have. I really think there's no reason not to. You have a great backup who's played one game and has a shutout. Why is he playing both those games against the Bruins? Like, what is the point of that?
Nobody could explain that one. I didn't understand it either, and it's a great point. I think Vigneault was just trying to pile up points early in the season, and I think it backfired.
Yeah, or does Vigneault get the sense that like Carter Hart? And this is the behind the scenes thing, and I don't have anything to base this off of. But sometimes a coach gets the sense that a goalie like wants the team to be his and run with it, and that kind of thing. And
maybe
play himself out of the problem.
But if that's the case, then this is another case. This is my famous Vigneault thing of Vigneault listening to goalies and not like he was famous for this in Vancouver. Way back when it was
he did have this problem in Vancouver, New York,
in Luongo, where he would play Luongo all the time.
Yeah.
And because Luongo was not okay with him not play, would get pissed off when he didn't play. You can't be that if you're the coach. You got to be out there.
And then it reared its ugly head in at the worst possible time in the playoffs when he plays Corey Schneider instead of Luongo.
Right. Yeah.
It creates a goaltending controversy.
Yeah, it was horrible, and and I had that famous time with him in the press conference in the Stanley Cup final, and I said, were you thinking about pulling Luongo? And he said, no, I saw his face when he skated over, and I'm like, he definitely wasn't going to be pulled. I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, and I immediately talked to Hitchcock about that afterwards. About like how would you react in that? He's like, yeah, I thought that was a strange thing to say. Like if your coach is getting shelled, you look at him and he's like, don't you dare pull me. That's basically what happened. Don't you dare pull me. It's like, that doesn't matter.
So
you can't look at it like that. So to me, maybe he's trying to read Carter Hart instead of protect Carter Hart. Like he really should Carter Hart's still a young goalie in my mind.
He's still a young guy, yeah.
So it's not like you have like the worst backup in the world behind him.
No, he's good. Elliot's good.
So he scored on yet.
So a couple people in the chat are asking about Kasperi Kapanen in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
why he's playing the fourth line.
I think I have the answer.
Go ahead.
I think the answer is they wanted to start him on the top line, but he had missed so much time. I think they're just trying to ease him into the lineup now because he hasn't played.
Right. I think that's it. But see, this is the thing, and I didn't want to say this when the trade happened, and people would think I'm being a sort of a Leaf homer when it comes to this. Kasperi Kapanen is not a top line winger. I like his game. He's got speed. He's feisty. He pushes people around. but I think he's a really great third liner and maybe an okay second liner. When he played third line with the Leafs, he was, if it was on the right side, he was good. If they elevated him, even if he was playing with Matthews or Tavares, he was okay, but he wasn't. He just doesn't have the finish. And for lack of a better term.
No, but it's true. Like definitely in the playoffs, he didn't have it.
Yeah, and he's got great speed, and I like his overall game. But in terms of being a scorer, because if you're a top line guy with Sidney Crosby, you got to be a finisher, and he's not a finisher.
Oh, absolutely.
So I don't know in the end how that's going to work, and that's why I liked the trade that the Leafs made, because they got a first-round pick and a good prospect in Hallander and then they needed to clear salary. And I hope Kapanen does well in Pittsburgh, but I don't know, based on what Jim Rutherford said after the trade. Well, we're going to put him on the top line with Crosby. Okay, I think you're edging there for disappointment, because I don't think he's a top line winger.
So Eck, we do have to come to grips with right now, statistically, the best goalie in the league is Semyon Varlamov. And
amazing.
Until that changes, Sorokin's played well, but he isn't going to get the playing time.
Well, yeah, and no, you're right. No, there's no question. I mean, I didn't think Varlamov would shut teams out for the first 3 games.
No, I mean, he's been even better than we thought he would.
I know, he's been ridiculous. And, and that is something that is freaking awesomely impressive. Last night, and then Sorokin got thrown into that first game, which was tough. Obviously, we talked about that.
Yeah.
Last night, though, Sorokin, man, he was
great.
He made some saves that were just ridiculous. And what he has, and my daughter, who's like, soccer goalie, but has played plenty of hockey goalie of her life. I'm watching this. I've been showing her Sorokin highlights and stuff like that before she goes back to college. And I showed her the highlights from last night's game. And she's like, man, that guy is one of the best waffles I've ever seen. And it's a really true point. His waffle hand is ridiculous. But yeah, what a situation for the Islanders to be in. I mean, it's fantastic to be able to bring Sorokin along slowly. Absolutely. I agree. Because geez, he just looked unbelievable last night. Some of his side to side is just crazy. But he's not.
And that's something that
I'm thinking about it. Varlamov keeps playing like this. But we all know Varlamov is a streaky goalie, so there's going to
and he gets hurt.
And he gets hurt. Varlamov is going to go cold at some point. Will Sorokin be able to steal that job away from him at that point?
Yeah, that'll be the issue, whether that can happen.
No, that's now the Islanders fans certainly aren't complaining. I mean, what the hell? That's fine if Riley's going to shut people out. Go with it.
Right. I think Freddie Anderson should look at how Sorokin covers the net, because he doesn't leave anything open at the post. I'm just telling you, this is a fact. If you watch him, you'll see.
Yeah, Russ, again, the puck went off somebody's skate.
That's fine. You could enable him. I'm just telling you the truth.
Jesus Christ. Well, I want to mention something about the Sabres that I thought was curious, and it may not come to fruition, but it may be an indicator of where the organization actually thinks that they are. This weekend, Dylan Cousins had played 5 games. He scored his first NHL goal. I think it was against Washington. The limit for the first year of ELC to kick in, I believe, is 7. If you play 6, then the 7th game is the 10 games as it would normally would be in a regular season. They sent after scoring his first NHL goal, they sent him down to the taxi squad. Yeah. Is this a case of them? Okay, we gave him a look. The American Hockey League is starting next week. We're not going to burn a year of entry level because we don't think we're a playoff team. So we're going to send Cousins down to the AHL. If they're doing that, then all this stuff of signing Taylor Hall and saying we can contend for a playoff spot is all kabuki theater. It really is. And I don't know. It could have been just a paper move, and he could come back next game, and what I just said is meaningless. But they called up Casey Middlestat to take his place. He got an assist in his first game. It's going to be interesting to see what teams like Buffalo, what teams like Detroit or Ottawa. Now, Detroit is not playing any of their young guys. Sider is over in the SHL. Right. So is Veleno. So is Lucas Raymond.
Detroit actually had the worst-looking defense that I've seen in the last decade.
Right. Yeah. But our team's going to burn entry level contracts the first year in this season. That's 56 games. That's sort of a wild and untenable season. I don't think that they're going to.
Okay, so let's talk about the Rangers. We'll talk about a few things. What Funky is saying, I don't know about whether D'Angelo liked an IG post of someone criticizing Shesterkin. I don't know about that. What we do know about is maybe him posting as a burner account on Twitter and actually seemingly admitting that it was him. And again, at the end of the day, he just got paid. He just came off his best season as a pro. And if he continues down this road, is it going to derail his season? And the Rangers are not going to look kindly on this because they already have enough problems with their team. Shesterkin has not come out strong. Quinn is trying to sit on leads. They don't have a good enough defense to sit on leads. One of the only things working out now the last few games is K-Andre Miller. Otherwise, they got problems, man.
Breaking news, Elliot Friedman is reporting that the NHL has issued a ruling on former Arizona GM John Chaika. There's a suspension. He's suspended through December 31st, 2021.
There you go. I will say this to Arthur Franco. There is no Twitter account that says Anthony or Tony D'Angelo, but there sure looked like a guy that was him in a different account on Twitter. So
I do think that the response from that burner account that dude, I could sue you for hacking, just exposes the fact that it was Tony D'Angelo.
Yeah, you never get away with that kind of stuff.
If you're going to get, here's the rule: if you're getting paid $5 million or almost $5 million, give up social media, you idiot.
Right. Give up social media. Give up your podcast.
That's the truest thing Mike's ever said. It's ridiculous. That's me. And it's funny. I mean, I used to do something where I would talk to teams about this like kind of stuff way back when social media was just starting out. I would go. I talked to like 3 different NHL teams about being careful on social media, not like getting yourself in this kind of trouble. This is like 4 years ago when it was just when people were just starting to post the pictures of them with like some schmo on Instagram, and everyone was like, oh, just stay away from it. It's pointless to you. I mean, it's like, if you're going to be on Instagram, don't, have people approve if they can see you. It's just like hockey players, has any hockey player like really like made a lot of money by increasing their brand via social media? No. I mean, no one's doing that. I mean, that's the argument. They're like, well, our brand, we can get our brand out, but no, it's not going to happen that way.
And here's what I'll say about Lafreniere. I'm not going to say he doesn't look ready. Is this the ideal situation for any young player? No. But the idea is I've seen him do good things on the ice. I haven't seen his last couple of games. But points sometimes take a while. Look at Jack Hughes. And again, Jack Hughes this year, nobody's going to argue that he's not going to be a great NHLer anymore. So everybody's got their own schedule. You never know.
That goal he scored on Sorokin was crazy. Jack Hughes, that shot he scored, that was like he had like an inch to put that thing under the crossbar, and he nicked it off the crossbar, and that was like one of these incredible shots. Yeah, I agree. Lafreniere, there's turmoil right now in New York. And
there is,
and and it's tougher when you have this when you have this like basic bubble situation. It becomes even crazier for a young player. In some way, easier because he's not going to get booed when he goes on the ice for the Rangers fans. Which is helpful, but he's not playing. I don't think Rangers fans would be booing him right now. I don't think
they would either.
Smart enough to know this is a kid.
Yeah,
but they need to get him. They need to get him more time with some skilled players. I think. I mean, they really do. Eventually, they will. But they're playing on the third line a lot. Like that's not gonna.
It's not the greatest thing for him. No.
Well, here, okay. Let me start. We didn't do a pre-show because Peter had limited time, so now we're going to do a post-show. Okay. And I want to segue from hockey.
Okay.
What's that? Yeah, I want to segue from hockey. I use hockey to start and then move to football, and it's about the media and it's about commentators. Mike Babcock had his first appearance on NBC yesterday, doing the in-between periods with NBC with Liam McHugh and Keith Jones on the Detroit-Chicago game. Obviously, being in Toronto and covering him for 4 years and seeing many press conferences with Babcock, I'm very familiar with his stories that he's told during press conferences. Mike Babcock, piece of advice: nobody cares about your stories about Pavel Datsyuk. Half the people watching on TV don't know who Pavel Datsyuk is. I mean, he's
trying to take a little bit. He's trying to do like the Burke thing, and no one can do that.
No, but Burke had. First of all, Babcock is humorless. He laughs at his own jokes. At least Burke is very humorous. He can.
Burke won't say Datsyuk. Burke say I had a player once who was da 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 da. He'll explain it, and they'll say maybe it had to be Pavel Datsyuk, but he's not. He's explaining it so people out there understand. Like
right, it's Russ. I mean, you watched the same thing I did.
I did. I felt like the problem was when he was using Datsyuk, they were drawing up on the board what Patrick Kane was doing, and they're two completely different players. Like, there's just nothing that I ever thought Patrick Kane and Datsuk had in common. He was talking about a defensive setup, and it's like, okay, great. Then you know what? Just talk about the defensive setup. Don't bring Datsuk into it, and it went on too long. They didn't know what to do. He was looking the wrong way on the camera. They had a shot of the back of his head at one point, which is not a shot you want to do with your top commentators. It was bad.
Yeah, it was really bad. Now, I'm segueing to football here because, and granted, I want from network broadcasters a down the middle broadcast. That's why I love Mike Emmerich as a play-by-play guy during Stanley Cup Finals. Even if it's the New Jersey Devils, he's going to be down the middle. Yeah. Well, Tony Romo and Jim Nantz yesterday, why don't you break out the friggin' skirt and the pom-poms and wave them for Patrick Mahomes? Because that's all you did for 3 hours. Oh, my God, Patrick Mahomes is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Look at how brave he is. Shut up. Just
look, there's no question that most of us think he's the best quarterback in football, Patrick Mahomes. But the idea is, the league would like to see him in the Super Bowl, so it's almost like the commentators are helping with that, and that's bad. Let's talk about the other game first with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. Eck and I were going back and forth. There's no question.
Guys, you guys know, first of all, let me just start this way. You guys know I'm not a football watcher necessarily, but you also have to know that I played 14 years of highly competitive football. I was a football quarterback in high school. I know football inside and out. I know plays. I know the whole 9 yards. I know the whole thing. So I'm not a big fan of watching it as much as I am hockey. They compete with each other. I have my family, and then I have sports, and my sports are filled with hockey. But the Aaron Rodgers play at the end of that game of not running that ball in, like I know you said he's slow.
Well, he definitely should have run. There's no question. I don't think
he had all the space. All he has to do is make one pump fake that way, and then and that gets everybody just that split second, and he's off. And he only had to go.
But number 60, the linebacker, was going his way, and that's why I think he'd have gotten caught after 5 yards.
He would have never made it, actually.
But it doesn't matter. X right in the point. He should have run. There's no question. And if he would have run, then I'm pretty sure his coach would have let him go for it. But the idea that coach, 5 yards closer. The idea that LaFleur didn't want to go for it and went for a field goal to hope that with 2 minutes left, Tom Brady was actually going to give the ball back was one of the dumbest coaching mistakes ever.
That was one of those, and I'm sitting there now. I'm like, we're watching something else, and because knowing him, my family, they're not football fans either. So I've got the game on my laptop, and I'm watching the game. So I'm not listening to what any of the commentators are saying. Mike, yesterday I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear one word out of anybody. I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, why are they kicking this field goal? I'm trying to figure it out. And
nobody can figure out. The problem I have with Rodgers is twofold. One, now he's 1-4 in conference finals, so clearly he's the assumptor of the Peyton Manning throne. He can get there. He's great in the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, there's a disconnect. But I have to blame LaFleur for when you're down 8 and you're inside the 10-yard line, you go for it. That was the problem with the Bills. They had the ball inside the 10-yard line twice and settled for field goals instead of going for touchdowns.
Here's what I don't think LaFleur figured on, Mike. Yeah. I heard this on ESPN today. Apparently, when you go to the analytics chart, 4th and 8, the percentage of them making it isn't great, like league-wide. But again, you have Aaron Rodgers, so that's why he probably went for the points, because he saw that that's a guarantee, and it's like you can't do that. Like, that's why you have Aaron Rodgers, you pay him $37 million, is because he might make that throw or run it in or do something to tie the game.
Well, you have to get 2 shots at the end zone. You have to look at, when you get to third down, you have to look at like you got 2 shots at the end zone.
Right.
The first play, you have, to me, him running and getting 4 or 5 yards doesn't always help you, because at that point you're making the field smaller for your receivers. Yeah. So the closer you get to the end zone, the harder it is to make a pass, and if you're going to score. So the problem is, so that doesn't really matter to me as much. But when he did make the pass, he didn't run in. He threw into double coverage on a guy that may not have scored anyway. Like if he catches that ball, he might be on the 1 yard line. It's like, to me, there's no way you can make that play. Well, I have a shuffle. I would have had one of the running backs in a shuffle pass position there. If Rodgers is in trouble, to shuffle to the right and let him try to run it in, because there's all kinds of things. Instead, they
not a bad idea.
Well, the problem I had with Rodgers was there was a play before that fourth down where he threw to and maybe it was the previous series, but he threw to Devontae Adams, who basically slowed down before hitting the goal post. It was at the back of the end zone, and he had a receiver at the 1 yard line who was wide open. Yeah. He had tunnel vision, and he threw to Adams, who was double covered, and he threw the ball feet over his head. So, on the
play before that, Brian Baldinger, the great Nassau Community College alum, like me, did point out on a film this morning that the play before that, when Rodgers was rolling out and it got blocked, a guy missed an assignment. He was supposed to pick off the guy who blocked that. If they didn't do that, he probably would have had a touchdown. And that's where you could say it's not all on Aaron Rodgers and it's not all on LaFleur. But
a lot of drop passes, and like the one, like the play they go for two, which again was somewhat questionable, but still they go for two in that situation. And they and that was like,
here's what it is. At the end of the day, if you have Tom Brady throwing 3 interceptions and you can't take advantage of that, you suck as a coach.
Crazy thing is, Russ, they almost did get the ball back and had another interference call, which was overturned.
Oh, that's another one. I mean, that was just I get that he did hold the jersey. I get it. But there was worse than that 3-4 plays before that.
Right, but Russ, the guy was holding his jersey for 5 yards. It was like he was using
but the idea was that same play happened on the other side 3 or 4 plays before that, and a lot other times during the game, and they weren't calling it.
If I could eliminate one, and I was a quarterback again. If I could eliminate one penalty in all of sports, it would be pass interference.
Yeah, I think. I'll tell you what's bad about pass interference now.
Yeah, it's hard.
When you're a smart quarterback, you know if everybody's covered, I might as well just throw it up and hope I get a flag. Because in the old days, it didn't work that way. But now it's just like, everybody's covered. I'll just throw it up and hope that they call a flag and I get a 40-yard pass out of it.
40-yard penalties that are just ridiculous. Like, it's just, to me, I know you shouldn't be able to hit the guy, but touch the guy, you catch the ball because you're being touched. I don't know. To me,
it's funny though. Everybody's saying Rob Gronkowski isn't a factor anymore. Well, he wasn't in the game yesterday, except the one pass that Brady threw to him was basically at the end of the game where they needed a first down and they basically iced the game away. So, Gronk was there when they needed him. And all I have to say, and I'm not pumping my own tires, is I predicted 28-24 Tampa, which was 4 points, and Tampa won 31-26, which is 5. And I predicted Chiefs 35-24, and it turned out 38-24.
The last thing,
the Magnificent is here.
Pretty damn close. At least you got that going.
The last thing that they were asking about the touchdown before the half, it did look like that the defensive alignment for that play was a similar defensive alignment that got Greg Williams fired from the Jets.
It was.
For doing it. And it was ridiculous. It was the easiest pass Brady ever made.
Yeah, I am still dumbfounded that with 6 seconds left, that it was 1-on-1.
I know.
They cleared any corner, any D-back that's not covering the out passes against Brady is out of their minds. To sit there and let the if the guy's coming at you, they're way more likely to cut to the sideline than he is to cut to the center.
Green Bay's defense was playing prevent for a field goal, and they ended up giving them a touchdown.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's the way it goes. Look, Pat Mahomes will have a great game. I think Mike made a good point. Hey, the left tackle injury, we're going to have to watch that and see who they fill in for KC. But I still like KC a little better than Tampa, but this is going to be a great matchup.
Tampa has 2 weeks at home to get ready, and the NFL announced yesterday that because of COVID, the team that Kansas City will not travel to Tampa until Saturday. So there's no
Yeah, I don't think Mahomes cares. I really don't.
Well, maybe not. All I know is I think the entire city of Buffalo is rooting for Tom Brady for once.
No, I get it, and that's fine. If those bunch of losers want to root for Tom Brady, that's fine. But the idea is this: the one thing about Mahomes is you never see him get worried under pressure. I've never seen him panic on the field. So he's got a chance, but that was the other thing. Rodgers' offensive line just deserted him at some point.
He's all that Andy Reid would have liked Donovan McNabb to become.
Yes, absolutely. You're
When
right.
I watch him, he's like that's exactly to me. That's what I see. Like
Donovan was too busy throwing up on the sidelines.
Yeah, but because he's got similar things to McNabb in some ways. He's got that.
That was a great point. Actually, he you know what? I think the difference is McNabb always wanted to make that pass that showed him to be a star, and Mahomes is willing to do a 3-yard pass or a 4-yard pass to get out of trouble.
Yeah. That's crazy, Mike. That's 6 when Brady played in his first Super Bowl. Yeah, that is nuts. I mean,
look, Brady's in 10 Super Bowls. He's the greatest quarterback ever. I get it.
So my wife to watch football, she's like, okay, you watch football. She's like, all right, in order for her to watch football, she needs to have a story. Tell me a story. Tell me what I'd be interested in hearing. I said, well, that right there, that's Tom Brady. No way.
Well, I can tell you that certain members of my family and certain friends will watch the Super Bowl with one hope, that Tom Brady loses. I
will tell you that the Jets did something that Buffalo didn't, and they beat Tom Brady in the playoffs. Maybe it was only once, but not a lot of teams have beaten him in the playoffs. So
Rex, like a broken clock, Rex Ryan was right twice a day.
We'll see. It'll be interesting.
It'll be interesting.
Brady's been in 18% of the Super Bowls. How about that? It's just nuts.
Yeah. I don't think Matt Stafford has ever won a playoff game, though.
Yeah. I think. And
he's got like amazing amount of yardage, and now he's a free agent.
Well, he's not a free agent. They're going to trade, but
they're going to trade him. That's right.
The interesting. Will Carson Wentz be traded?
No, Wentz is not getting traded. That's why they brought in everybody that likes Wentz.
Will Sam Darnold be traded? Well,
I didn't like the era that Aaron Rodgers comes out afterwards and says his days in Green Bay are probably done.
Yeah, I think he's done. I think he's as quick as he can get out.
That game, you shouldn't say that.
I didn't hear. Did he
let that? That's just, I don't know.
I don't know if he actually said it, but he
did.
He did? Okay. I know he said after the game that it wasn't his decision to make that call.
Yes.
But there was a good point. At ESPN, someone said, hey, a quarterback could change that call and worry about the repercussions later. He didn't do that.
He could have run. That wasn't,
No, but I mean, on fourth down, he could have called off the field goal team and called an audible. The coach can't do it.
I don't know if he could have done that. I don't know how you're going to call an audible. You can't call the field goal team off.
Yes, you can. You can call a field goal team off the field. You just say, don't go there. These guys stay.
I don't know if he had that.
Did he have a timeout left? I don't remember.
I don't remember either. I mean, but there's no reason not to go for it. And when they threw the field goal team out there, I'm like, oh, they're going to try a fake field goal? That's the only thing I could think
That's what you were thinking. Okay.
Because that would be like, because by that point, Tampa's like, why are they kicking a field goal? They get totally confused. They got their lineup out there. I would have tried a fake field goal. I mean, at least, but I don't know. Kind of crazy. All right, guys. Fun times. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. That was our post show. I like the post show concept actually quite a bit. We might consider that more in the future. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you all tomorrow. Enjoy the one game tonight.